안녕하세요. Hello, 8th graders. In honor of Spirit Week, I am wearing a black top and black pants. You can guess what I'll be wearing on Black Day on Friday as well. Anyways, welcome to Geology 8. Today we're going to talk about the fossil record. So today we're going to start with our statement of inquiry instead of an entrance task. So please make sure you write this down in your notebooks. Statement of inquiry is something that we're going to go back to again and again and again. Our statement of inquiry for this unit on geology is: the story of our planet is written in rocks. It's a pretty simple statement of inquiry, but it's something we'll have to think about again and again as we are studying this topic. So take a minute to write that down, and then let's move on to our objectives for today. So our objectives for today are: first, content objective. I can understand how we can learn about the Earth from the fossil record. And our language objective: I can explain how the history of the Earth is written in the fossil record. Keywords, we got one of them: strata. So today you should know what the word strata means. If you learn what any word means today, please learn the word strata. So the last slide that we looked at together last week when we were talking about deposition was a picture of the Grand Canyon. And that picture showed you the different layers of the Grand Canyon. And we can see another picture of the Grand Canyon here. And again, we can see all the different layers that go through the Grand Canyon. Now, these different layers of sediment are called strata. And these strata are very much related to the fossil record. Okay, and when we talk about the fossil record, one key idea to know is that the deeper that you go into the Earth, the older the fossils are going to be. And so if we look up here, like towards the surface, this layer here, if we find fossils there, they're going to be relatively recent fossils. If we start digging up fossils down here in this reddish area, then those fossils are going to be older, so on and so forth. Here we have, and these different layers of rock, these different layers of sediment are called strata. Okay, and a lot of times they'll have different colors because there were actually different types of sediment being deposited in that area. I'm not sure if the Grand Canyon was... Actually, I do think the Grand Canyon at some point in time was at the bottom of an ocean. And so sediments there would be different than if this was raised in above water. So we have different types of strata because there were different types of sediment being deposited in the same area during different eras. Okay, and here we have an actual picture of the Grand Canyon itself, and right here at the bottom we can see the Colorado River, and it's cut through a tremendous amount of layers of sediments, and these sediments date from the Permian era backwards. So the Permian era, oh gosh, Permian era, I can't off the top of my head tell you how long ago that was. I want to say during the Permian era the first dinosaurs began to appear, and then we go back further: Pennsylvanian, Mississippian, Devonian, Cambrian, and Precambrian era. So the Precambrian era is, I want to say, about 1 billion years ago, and then we have the Vishnu schist and the Zoroaster granite, which go back to like 3 billion years ago. And so we have a tremendous amount of time represented in these sediments, and if we looked at fossils in each one of these sediments, we would learn a lot about life in different eras on Earth. So looking at the different types of fossils in different layers of sediment is what the fossil record is all about. By finding fossils in different layers of sediment, we can learn a whole lot about the development and evolution of life on our planet. Here's an example for you. People were finding fossils of dragonflies that were tremendously large, 70 centimeters in wingspan. And this woman is in the picture in the lower right hand corner. She's actually holding a scale model of how big that dragonfly would have been. If you have an aversion to bugs like me, it would really make your skin crawl to imagine something like that kind of landing on your shoulder. And dragonflies are relatively non-creepy creatures. Actually, in similar layers of deposits and sediments, they also find what looks like millipedes, which are 2 meters long. Okay, that's like 6 feet long. It's like a 6-foot bug with lots of legs crawling all over the ground. So they found these gigantic insects way far back in the fossil record. And so by seeing insects like this, they're learning about life on our planet. So in addition to finding these dragonflies, these ancient dragonflies, they also found dragonfly larvae. This is kind of like the immature form of a dragonfly. Typically these they're called nymphs. They live underwater and they're very aggressive hunters. So anyways, when we observe these, we can notice like, hey, these larvae and these dragonflies, they look very similar to dragonflies now, and so we can tell, oh, hey, maybe they didn't develop much. Or we can see that, oh, well, actually, they've gotten a lot smaller since then. So the fossil record tells us about the life cycle of living things. Here we can see that the dragonflies had a very similar life cycle. They had a larval stage and they had a mature adult stage. And again, this tells us about growth stages of different living creatures. We can see how these living creatures changed over time. So they've gotten smaller. And this also gives us information about the climate, because one of the reasons why dragonflies were so tremendously huge at that time were because there was a lot more oxygen in the air at the time. Right now, our atmosphere has about 21% oxygen in the air. It's mostly nitrogen, like some 70% nitrogen, but 21% is oxygen. But at the time that the dragonflies were tremendously large, and there were 6-foot long millipedes crawling all over the ground. At that time, there was 35% oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. And so because there was so much oxygen, insects were able to get much, much bigger. And the fossil record can also tell us more about what the surface of the Earth was like. In that image of the Grand Canyon, I think I mentioned to you that there was one layer that was the Precambrian layer, which was 1 billion years old, and then you get down to like the Vishnu schist and the Zoroaster granite, which are like 3 billion years old. So some of you who are paying attention, you might have noticed, hey, what happened to 1 million years? And there are not 1 million, but 1 billion. There are 1 billion years of sediments that are missing in the fossil record in the Grand Canyon. And so a lot of geologists think that this was probably caused by glaciers. And what glaciers can do is they can just remove an entire sheet of rock from an area if they're large enough and big enough. And so yeah, the fact that we have missing layers from the fossil record in the Grand Canyon tells us a little bit about the surface features of the Earth at that time. Mainly that there was a gigantic glacier there in that area at that time. All right, so that's it for our lesson today. However, you do have homework. Your homework today is 2 questions, and what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to answer these questions, post your answers to Schoology. These questions shouldn't be too difficult to answer. So our first question is about a scientist who is digging and she's looking for human remains. She's looking for human fossils, but she digs 1 meter deep and she finds some dinosaur fossils. Now, should this scientist dig deeper if she's looking for human fossils, or should she not dig deeper? Tell me why or why not. Our next question is about a scientist who finds a fossil of a shark, squid, and seaweed in Minnesota. And so what can the scientist conclude about Minnesota based on their findings? Okay, I got a little image here of the fossil record, so we can think about more about that. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the fossil record and how we learned about mass extinctions. If you have any questions, once again, please hit me up at sjkwok@sejongacademy.org. You can also find me for office hours every day from 9:30 a.m. You can find a link for that in Schoology as well. And lastly, yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, you can also contact Mr. O if you have questions too. Mr. O is at hoh1@sejongacademy.org. Okay, thank you. Have a good day. Peace.